Hey guys, it's ConfColorSues here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the current state of Six Flags. This past Thursday, February 29th, they shared their Q4 2023 report, which also encompassed the entirety of the 2023 year. So it really shows what has changed since Salim first came into his position as the CEO of Six Flags. Of course, he made a lot of radical changes prior to the start of the 2022 season, and that definitely reflected in all of the performance from that year. 2023, they changed their strategy a little bit, and it looks like that certainly wound up working out. First, I'm just going to go through some of the financial stuff, which I'm not really going to delve too deep into because at the end of the day, we're coaster enthusiasts. We care more about the coaster side than anything, but I am going to go over that. And then just a few other things and some forward-looking stuff for the company, of course, with the merger incoming. So Q4 2023 wound up being a bit of an improvement over 2022. For starters, there were about $15 million in merger-related costs that wound up coming because of the merger with Cedar Fair, so that did take a little hit on the financials, but nothing too overly bad. But you can look at the attendance for Q4 2023. 4.3 million guests attended the Six Flags parks during Q4, which was a 6% increase from 2022. Additionally, revenue went up about 13 million or 5%. Additionally, per capita spending in parks went up about 5%. And admission spending per capita went up about 4%. So overall, they did fairly well, and they did say it fell a little short of expectations, which they do blame on a few factors, one of which being weather, which usually I see that as kind of a cop-out, but during the Fright Fest season especially, it was definitely true that weather played a pretty big impact on the Six Flags parks. There were some pretty nasty storms and a lot of days where they had to close early or had lower attendance than they were anticipating, so I definitely understand that. But like I said, I didn't want to delve too much on the financials. I am going to look at the full year financials, which definitely paint a really interesting picture. Attendance for 2023 went up 9% to 22.2 million, and they state that they believe weather had an impact on the full year attendance by over 1 million guests, which includes rain and snow in California during spring break and a heat wave in Texas, and a few other things involving rain and whatnot. So like I said, weather, they definitely feel impacted their performance quite a bit, but otherwise, a lot of the spending in parks, both on admission and on other things, did go down compared to 2022. And that's because everything is definitely a lot cheaper than it was last year, especially admission, which of course means that by dropping admission, you're going to bring in guests who aren't going to spend as much money in the parks. Usually families spend the most money in the parks, and by dropping the admission, they're opening the door to more crowds like teenagers, and teenagers typically don't spend as much in the parks, so that's why that went down. But otherwise, 2023 was definitely an improvement compared to 2022, and 2022 obviously was a bit of a rough year because they were kind of seeing it as an experimental year to try out different things. 2023, they ironed out what worked and what didn't, and went from there. And looking forward now to 2024, 2024 is going to be a very different year. That's because I feel that Salim's whole strategy throughout 2022 and 2023 would eventually lead towards the merger. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is something he had in mind for a while. He has a history of turning companies around and merging and whatnot, and seeing as that is his history and he came into the Six Flags chain with a very different mindset than others, I think overall he was looking to get to this goal, and it looks like that could happen. They did state that March 12th will be the date when their shareholders will vote on whether or not the merger will happen, so we will know pretty soon whether or not the merger will go through. I'd assume it probably will, but of course there is always a chance that it doesn't. And in this earnings report, they definitely emphasized that they are assuming that the merger will go through, but they do still have plans for if the merger does not go through and they have to continue to operate on their own. They do have plans for that as well if the situation arises. But in addition to that, we also got some updates regarding Six Flags Qiddiya. Salim stated that the park is expected to open come Q1 of 2025, so in about a year, which is really exciting to see. That park is absolutely massive. He also stated that Six Flags will be operating and managing the park, and that they're going through with finalizing the agreement with Qiddiya, the Saudi partner over there. So definitely gonna be interesting to see how Qiddiya winds up impacting the rest of the chain. Like I said, they're only managing and operating it. They didn't put really that much money into it, so the licensing is there, but they are managing and operating it. So I do think it will have an effect on the rest of the parks. I'm not sure how big of an effect, but this park in Qiddiya is completely different than the other Six Flags parks. Has a much heavier emphasis on theming. It's a much larger park, really high quality rides. Of course, it's a brand new park in a completely different market than all their other parks, which are all located in North America. So I think that's definitely gonna be very interesting to watch how they wind up handling that. And of course, assuming that the merger goes through, how Cedar Fair plus Six Flags will handle that in addition to their massive portfolio of parks that will be built up from the merger occurring, which is definitely gonna be an interesting thing to watch. But I think that this quarter of earning report, and of course the entirety of 2023, definitely shows that Salim has adjusted the strategy for Six Flags and has really improved operations and everything from a financial standpoint, and improved all of the performance for the company, which I think is a great sign. And of course, going forward with the merger, Salim is going to take on a bit of a different role. He will be chairman of the board, so he still will have a very important role at the company, but he will no longer be the CEO, which I think will definitely spell some change for some of the parks, both in the Cedar Fair chain and in the Six Flags chain. Richard Zimmerman will be the new CEO of the company, so he's definitely going to come in and change up some things in the Six Flags parks. The call did not address any possible changes to the parks that will come from the merger, so they haven't discussed if they're going to rebrand any of the Cedar Fair parks, rebrand any of the Six Flags parks, none of that. I'd imagine there'll be another pretty sizable call that happens after the merger goes through, again, assuming that it does go through, going over all the changes that will happen to the parks. 2024, we won't really see any changes, so I'm curious to see how the Six Flags parks and Cedar Fair parks will operate throughout 2024, kind of in a state of limbo where they will be operated under one company, but they're still not fully there yet. They still have some integration to do, so I think that's going to be very interesting to watch. But overall, I think it's really interesting to see how far Six Flags has come from when Salim first took over to now, when they're getting ready to merge together with Cedar Fair. I know many people were very against Salim. They thought the company was going to fail, that he was going to drive it into the ground, all kinds of crazy things. Obviously, that is no longer the case, and the company is being set up to be put into a situation where it's going to be better off than it ever was before. I think that this partnership, this merger between Cedar Fair and Six Flags will be very beneficial for both chains and their parks. I think that this is definitely going to help from a financial standpoint, where they're not really going to have to worry about money as much. The only thing I am concerned about is, of course, maybe a lack of innovation and a lack of capex, because they're not really going to be competing with each other anymore. But I'd imagine they're still going to keep investing in the parks that need them to get more visitors coming year after year. And looking forward, I think the future is very bright for Six Flags and, of course, by proxy, Cedar Fair. I want to know what you guys think about Six Flags' performance for 2023, how you felt as a guest compared to 2022 from 2023, if you thought 2023 had a better guest experience than that of 2022. Let me know down in the comments, and of course, if you're excited for the merger, also let me know down there. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more roller coaster content coming soon to Hollywood Studios. Goodbye, guys.